The year in the 1970s, I would speak on that era of the 70s era, being born in Cook County Hospital to the parents of Monica, and as I call him, King Pojo, born on my father's birthday. So I always felt that I was a special child and a unique child, as my mom would say, as I got old enough to understand what that meant. Now, being born to these teen parents, it was a struggle for them and myself because they both wanted to finish experiencing childhood and life until adulthood, but now you can't do that with these children. So I was banked around a lot, with a great aunt, with my grandmother, with my great grandmother that I was raised by. So I was going to a lot of schools. I went to Price, Anthony Overton, Revis, um, Greeley, John M. Smith, Beethoven, Deneen, James Madison, to name a few. Those was the majority of the schools that I went to as an adolescent. So the trials and tribulations of that, you know, you constantly meeting new friends. And in the beginning, I can't think of the name of the preschool that I went to, but I started out as a troubled child because I was kicked out of preschool, because of the language that I've learned from the elders around me. In the story and tells that I said, "Ooh, mama, look at that baby sucking his mama titty." And they expelled me from that preschool. So that was a run along joke throughout the family, that's what had happened to me, but which wasn't a good thing, and it should have taught them to be mindful of the things that they say around a child. So coming up in the 70s and 80s era, you know, 82, 83, the plague of the crack epidemic hit. Before that, hearing about teas and blues and marijuana was a big thing. Family entrenched into both sides of the street. My grandmother used to say highly intelligent, but ran a criminal enterprise. So her nickname was school teacher because she was a school. She schooled the streets. She schooled the game. People that wanted to know the insides and the outs of organized crime or dealings in the street. She was able to school them on them. So she having me around with her as her eldest grandchild, running around, I was able to witness and see a lot of things that a child shouldn't have been able to see, and to my knowledge, she ran whorehouses up to the number between 30 and 60 whorehouses, you know, uh, her and one of her elder brothers, that was considered a drug lord, that was a favorite great uncle to me because of the $1 million rings that my grandmother would wear and the chinchilla furs. And, I was excited with seeing these expensive glasses and them talking about we going to a Liberace set. So they hanging around the likes of Liberace, uh, Uncle Fluky Stokes, as I known him to be. They was all hanging at my auntie Don's house. And I believe now as I'm an adult, I know that Auntie Don house was the money counting house. That was the house that they orchestrated and put all the money together. Because before I used to go to school, um, Uncle Fluky would say, "Whatever I can fit in my pockets, I can have." But at the time, I'm a teeny bopper. I'm about 6, 7 years old, up into 9 years old, between that range. And I used to fold it how I used to see them fold the money and stuff it in my pockets. But you can only get so much in there like that. So one day, Auntie Don And my grandmother pulled me to the side and showed me how to roll the money. Say I can get more like that. So I would roll the money up like a pencil, and I can get more money like that. So they taught me basically how to conceal money, as I would say in today's society. And with that being said, I was the likable person because now I can afford $100 or more a day in a video game. So all my friends would like, to hang out with me. I had a friend named Parnell. I don't know his last name at the moment, but his mother was m- hearing impaired. So, to first go to his house and see him speak and sign with his mother, I was intrigued by that because I never witnessed that before. So I was aware of sign language from that point. And my aunt, it was we call her Aunt Dump. She was a owner of a liquor store called Pepe's on 47th and Cottage Grove. So I would have to walk past her and see her every day. So that was more extra money that I would get. And on my way to school. Now across the street from Pepe's, my father had a game room, tire shop, uh, basically a gambling spot, for lack of a better words, that I would know as of today. And that's where he would have his crew of guys to meet up with him to discuss whatever business that they would have. And I'm the child. I walk through, they rub me on the head, get over there. I'm watching them play pool and shooting dice. So the gambling aspect of my life came from that point. When I speak on having large sums of money, by the time being a millionaire at 13 years old, this is how I'm accumulating this money that I'm accumulating, because I'm getting the money from family members that's rich, to my knowledge now, me gambling and then spiraling off into the life of crime of breaking in cars, selling hubcaps, and being introduced to these chop shops, so we created a crew called the Auto Boys. Now, this is things that I really don't have to do because we're staying. My great grandmother has a paid for townhouse at the time, so I didn't have to pay no rent or nothing like that. And I had a grandfather, my mother's biological father. She didn't meet him until she was 16 years old, of knowing of him because he was serving a 25-year prison sentence. He came home, he was a real estate guru. And to getting to know him, he had said he's been hustling property since he was 13 years old. And he moved up here, from Arkansas. So now everybody confused because we're taking on this last name of my grandmother's husband. And it's his mother that raised me, this great grandmother, Medea, that I'm speaking on. So I would say she's in her late 60s at the time of me coming into her home. So just picture like a 60, 70-year-old lady trying to raise a 10-year-old child. So now she favored and loved me so much because, of course, my grandmother was pregnant with my mother when she met her husband. So, and my mother was the eldest child of my grandmother's. And then my grandmother had two children from her husband. So we really was entrenched into the family, but my mother was born into thinking that this guy was her biological father and this was her biological grandmother. So until 16 years old, this guy used to call home all the time and ask for my mother. And she said, it's a guy always calling here, asking me, saying he my daddy, but he's like, who is this guy? You my, and at the time when her, how do I say, her stepfather came into the house with my grandmother, he they both told her, yes, that is. And she said that crushed her. That crushed her because she didn't, if you really think about that, the trauma sets in from that point. You're already a teen mom. She was very independent. So when a person will wonder how did I move and lived in so many projects throughout the city of Chicago, from Cabrini Green to the Abla homes, which we call a village, to um, every project building on State Street, from the 22nd down to 55th, um, to the Ida B. Wells, 45th and Evans, 4414 Cottage Grove, the row houses, all the way up until the Altgale Gardens. I was entrenched in these neighborhoods. So I remember at a time at John M. Smith, I moved there, that's called the Village, to the grammar school of John M. Smith. You know, it was ringing and ringing and ringing about the bullies, you know, because you're looking at all these 16-story buildings, 1,600 apartments, and you have a lot of youth throughout these buildings. So in these buildings, it was 1209 South Racine, 1111 West Roosevelt, and 1239 South Racine. And you got to keep in mind it's 16 stories and 1,600 apartments in each building, and how it was designed like a baseball field. So, which was the parking lot in the middle, and the kids would form up and meet in the parking lot and fight after school, or get off the parking lot. I mean, get off the school lot and would fight in the street and spill over in the street. So when you was the new kid, this what was you had to look forward to. And I used to wonder, like, why would my mother keep moving to these places? But unbeknownst to me, she was just being independent. She never wanted to ask nobody for nothing. So by her not wanting to ask nobody for nothing and be independent, she was moving to all these low income places that she can afford with the jobs that she was holding. So I commend her for that. But at the time, I used to question and ask her, did she love us? You know, because why are you moving in these places and they dangerous? You know, it's rampant with drugs, shooting, all of the worst kind that you live in amongst. But for somehow, some way, I was able to find family. I was able to find love. I was able to find comfort in these situations that I was in. But we always had the east side of Chicago, which is 75th and Dorchester. My neighborhood is called Sircon City. And with that neighborhood, it was a brotherhood of family members, friends. It was like a huge neighborhood with majority of boys, young boys, all of my age and a little older. So you had the big brother, you had the cousin, you had the elder uncle, you had all that you needed to teach you the rules of the ropes or how to be a man. You had right there in that neighborhood. So once again, my great grandmother, you know, she was an avid, she loved baseball. But I think I got in tune with history and wanted to know the history because I think she came from a family of like 7 sisters, 5 to 7 sisters. And back in her days, I think she was born in 19, I don't want to get it wrong, but like 1913 or something like that. And I should have had my obituaries and everything laid out. And in her day, she was a dancer, you know, like ballroom dance, I think they used to call. So they used to wear the nice outfits and do the kick up leg, you know, dances back with Cab Calloway and the jazz scene. So she was thriving throughout the jazz scene. So I learned a lot of things from her as well. I can really sit down and ask her about any and everything. She just was basically focused on me staying in school, or I would see her fight for me a lot, meaning like, stop putting him in this household, that household, and baking him around. Just bring him over here with me. Because she had 2 sons. They was both grown out in the Air Forces and Army. And my grandfather that I knew of, you know, my grandmother's husband, he was a drug and alcohol abuse counselor for 50 years, you know, and unbeknownst to me, they was addicts themselves, you know, and a lot of my childhood memories was lost far as pictures was concerned because a lot of our houses was on fire from, you know, being on drugs and setting beds on fire and chairs on fire and just burning us out everywhere we moved. So when my biological grandfather did come home, he had buildings, and one he had on 59th in Halsted, that he told my mother, because you got to think, for 25 years of her life, 25 years of her life, he was incarcerated. She didn't know him until till she was 16. Speaking of him on the phone, she still hadn't met him in person. So when he came home, he you know, told her that she can live in any property, rent free that he have, because she did have a job, and he felt like, this is my child, I need to play catch up. So he bonded with me very well, you know what I'm saying, because I basically was like a son of his that he can raise from childhood, because he wasn't able to do that with his own children. Now my grandfather is known to probably have about 30 something children. So growing up, I always had an issue with knowing exactly who was our family members. You know, my mother's younger brother, my grandmother's son, we 4 years apart. So we used to argue and fight a lot, and I guess once he known that our last name wasn't biologically ours, he teased me about it. But of course, that was out of my control. But by him doing that, it led me on a journey of wanting to know who I was, who are my family, and things of that nature, because he used to say it a lot. And I don't know if it hurt my feelings. I just didn't understand why he would say such a thing. And then my mother had a habit of, when I bring stuff to her, she'll just say, forget about that, don't listen to him, and then check him about the situation. But it was a bunch of jealousy and all that, because he was basically the youngest child from his mother and father, and here I come, his nephew, and I get everything I want. So it's like, you know, I have video games, ColecoVisions, Ataris. I have everything I want, clothing. My father at this time, he a young millionaire himself, in the street, kingpin status, king of his own gang, and I'm the son of his. So they tried their best to like distance me from that, but you really can't, because now I'm getting of age to where I know that I should be spending time with my father, and when my birthday rolling around, and I want this new bike and things of this nature. But my grandfather has stepped in place to where I didn't need anything. And this is where I learned my will to work for what I want. Because that's what he was avid about, that. Like, you're going to work for what you want. And by him having all these properties, he had a 75 unit building on 68th and Dorchester. And I'm living on 75th in Kenwood, but I can walk from 75th to 68th in Dorchester. Now, I'm walking through a neighborhood that's the oppositions of the organized crime that my neighborhood is. But I never really had no issues making it down to the building. Or my grandfather would usually just come pick me up on the weekends, and my job was to clean up the properties, apartments, and help paint, you know, take out the trash. And I can earn anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 every weekend by doing this, because you got to keep in mind it's 75 units. And he want me to learn how to earn money the right way. So he had customized Excaliburs, customized 1959 Packards. Like, he was into a lot of custom made everything from clothes, to jewelry. And then he had a big African presence. Like, he would have a lot of African garbs, that he would wear. And he was very uh, dark complected, so he stood tall. Like, every time he went in his pocket, it was just pocket full of $100 bills, you know, and even when it would be a bank slip or in a envelope, he just always walked around with thousands of dollars on him, you know. So I was very intrigued by him, you know, and he was like my hero. So now, during the time of grammar school, when children are cracking jokes or casing, as we call it, if you had holes in your shoes or holes in your clothes, or you smell like mothballs, or you smell like kerosene heaters and things of that nature, people would rag on you and crack jokes about that. So I never wanted to experience or witness none of that. But the problem was with my mother trying to be so independent, if she took on these big projects of moving to different places on her own, even though my grandfather had told her she can live luxury in any one of his places, she still would take it upon herself and move elsewhere. And when we go to her friend's house or whoever house, and they might have had kerosene stuff, heaters in their house, and we stand there for weeks at a time just because she bonding it with her friends while they going to work and raising the children together. Now I'm going to school. I have on new items, but I'm smelling like kerosene. So now it's like, oh, you stink. You smell like kerosene. Y'all don't have no heat. You know, the kids is cruel. You know, y'all don't have no heat. So now you go back and you tell this to your mother, like, I'm getting, you know, bothered by smelling like kerosene. And it's bad for my health and this and that. Because now, of course, my grandparents is asking, how you doing in school? And, you know, I'm being an innocent child. And I'm like, oh, well, you know, my mom keep me over here with her friends. And this and that is kerosene. The kids is being mean and rude. And, you know, that's when it got around to my great grandmother to say, listen, enough is enough. You just go on, complete school and finish school and work and just let him live here. And you got access to him whenever you want, but let him live here. So that way, you know, his, you know, my grandmother's house, they catching on fire. My great aunt, she's in a wheelchair. So it's only so much she can do, you know, from an incident she had. So now I'm just, she was funny, but she was very stern. So it was like she was the cruel, mean auntie, you know, but you look in her eyes and it was like you turned the other way, like you didn't want to witness nothing. Or as a child, you was frightened by her because it was like she knew that she had to instill fear because of her handicap. So she had to have a stronghold over these children in the household because we'll feel like she can't get up and do nothing to us or stuff like that. So she made sure that she said, I'll take the side of this chair off, you know, and get you. So, you know, things of that nature. Or it was times that I seen the love that she had for us, me and my cousin. We grew up like sisters and brothers, which it was her grandmother, but she was my great aunt because our grandmothers are sisters. So these guys on this block on Ingleside, we was living on Drexel, and I was going to Revis at the time. And these guys on Ingleside, I think liked my cousin because she was fair skinned, pretty girl, you know what I'm saying, as they, you know, they liked her. But she was still a child, you know what I'm saying, in mind, and wasn't focused on no boys and all that stuff. So she would basically get us out of a lot of trouble of people trying to jump us, being the new kids in the neighborhood, and she having fights with girls and I'm having a fight with the guys. She would basically calm that down because the bullies of the neighborhoods would be liking her, you know. So if she lead them on or whatever, or just tell them my grandmother's real stern, I can't come outside and things of that nature, they'll be hanging outside in the front of the building once they find out, because they can watch and see where you live at. So they'll stand outside and try to walk us to school. So if it was times that my aunt would have to go to the doctors or whatever, we would have to wait on her till her ride come pick her up, put her in the van, and then she go on to the doctor and we walk off to school. So now on her wheelchair, she has some special like made mag rims. And these kids is bullies and they so ignorant at the point my aunt is saying, hey, leave them alone. They don't want to be bothered. And one of the bullies was telling her, okay, well, give us the mags off your wheelchair. So, we too young to really defend her, and we really too young to defend ourselves. And it was like a huge family. So I used to have to fight their nephew every day. So that's why people's like, I'm so good with fighting, because I had to fight in all these different neighborhoods that my mother keep moving to, or whoever I was living with. It's a new neighborhood. So in reality, I had a lot of trauma growing up as a child because I have to keep meeting new friends. I have to keep running into fights with people, the neighborhood bullies. And at the same token, I'm wondering why I'm not in the same household with my mother and father. But the days just go on, and I make the best out of it with whoever house that I'm living in. So I'm going house to house, pillar to post, couch to a bed. I'm just all over the place. And I remember laying down on a couch, and we used to have this huge uh, world map picture on our wall. And I just remember being as a child saying, I'm gonna go to all those places. When I get old, I'm going to all those places. So that was like something that speaking into existence could happen, or power in a tongue, And from that point on, it was time to, my aunt Joanne, from 6 months back and forth up into 10 years old, was living in Puerto Rico. So now I'm in Puerto Rico, and I'm having to learn a second language, but majority of the people in Puerto Rico was all still speaking English as well. So I got up into like 70% bilingual. Then I think some storms or something came, and Aunt Joanne had moved back to Chicago, her and Uncle Louis, and I moved back to Chicago with them, and then we went and moved to Miami with my Uncle Bobby and my great grandfather. So me, my mother, my great grandfather, we moved to Miami with my Uncle Bobby. This had to be like 1982 or 83 because my great grandmother had passed. I was still under, let me see, let me think, I was about 6 or 7 years old
Okay.
during this time, because you got to keep in mind, I'm coming from Puerto Rico back to Chicago, now from Chicago to Miami. Now, now we stand in Miami, I have to run into my cousins, Atu and Raheem, that was basically rude and cruel to us, because it was like they didn't want nobody playing with their games, or they didn't want nobody riding their four wheelers. And keep in mind, my uncle was a drug lord, so they had everything. But the security that my great uncle gave me was anything in his house is yours, it belongs to you. So I always had a shelter when it came to the head of the households that I was placed upon. So as you see before, my great grandmother, she took up and stood for me. My great aunt took up and stood for me. My grandmother took up and stood up for me. I just didn't like the fact that she was so smart and sharp and intelligent, but in their times they was indulgent. So with her indulgent, it took a lot of bonding time between me and her, but I learned so much from her as well, because she used to use big words, and you know, you would have to look in the dictionary, or she would have you do things like that to keep your mind sharp, like read the dictionary and from A to Z, learn these words and encyclopedias. And she was just very avid of you learning. And I don't really know if that's why some of it was calling her school teacher, because she would do guys in the street that way. I don't know, but I know they feared her. My grandmother was feared. She was feared and loved, and she definitely was an enforcer. So like I say, her and her older brother, she ran the whorehouses. you know, whatever trades that they had going on. She had $1 million rings and just expensive furs and clothing, like glasses, just everything that was high end, my grandmother had. You know, so it used to be so much stuff around, like clothes from the floor to the ceiling, closets just full. She just had everything. So I looked up to her from that to know what a classy woman was, you know, so and a highly intelligent woman as well. But at the same time, I was able to notice them indulging. And then that's when I can see the decline in the family's dynamic, you know. Um, so now I come it was some hurricanes going on in Miami, and my mother was like, no, I'm not staying here. We moving again. So now I'm moving again. So now when I moved back to Chicago, my father's sister is living in California. So now I'm shipped to California. So so that's why for me, I'm born in Chicago, raised in Puerto Rico, Miami, New York, and LA. So going to all of the schools that I named previous in grammar schools that was previous, it led me up to meeting so many people on each side of Chicago, because the north side of Chicago living in Cabrini Green, the west side of Chicago living in the village, the Abler homes, the south side of Chicago, Harold Ickes, uh, the Dearborns, Robert Taylor's, Stateway Gardens, to Ida B. Wells, 4414 South Cottage Grove, 45th and Evans, the row houses, to Altgale Gardens. So I lived to the Leclerc Courts. I lived on each side of the city. So now, as a child, I'm learning how to catch the trains, catch the buses at an age that I would never let my child travel by themselves, but I was able to do it. And during these times, I'm learning different hustles with my friends and my cousins, to where extra ways to make money was popping the meters. So the parking meters used to can hit them at the bottom, or take a screwdriver and pop it from the bottom, and you got $10, $15 or more a day in change as a child. So you walking up and down the street, if it's 30, 40, 50 meters, and you getting $10 each one, you getting $200, $300 a day on your way to school. You know, so I was accumulating money that way. You know, now by this time, I'm a good 10 years old. I'm living up north. I'm going to Horace Greeley. My friends was the Vega brothers. Wrestling was real popular during this time. And Danny Vega and his brothers, and the older brothers, was actually wrestlers. They made it to the league, you know, of wrestling. So I was very interested in wrestling, and you know, baseball, softball, you know, soccer, basketball, football, any sports I was interested in it. Stickball, handball, from learning from playing in Puerto Rico, handball. Um, my grandmother, another uncle of mine, they was avid gamblers. They was pool sharks. They knew how to shoot pool very well. So as a child, I'll show you a photo of me with a pool stick, and my cousin is in his little walker, Marcus. He's in his walker, and I'm standing there with a pool stick in my hand. So a lot of my story, I have pictures to back up what I'm saying as well. You know, even though I lost a lot of pictures from those fires that I spoke on previous, and a lot of, you know, old artifacts of things that we would have in the household got burned. So I didn't really have a lot of pictures, or I don't think I have any pictures, baby pictures with me and my mother, or me and my father, or me and my grandmother. I might have one, you know, I might have one picture, you know, as an adolescent, but not a baby picture of my mother holding me. I don't have stuff like that because of the fires. Now, my father's mother was very instrumental in my life as well, because just like my great grandmother, from my mother's husband, mother took me in. My grandmother also done the same. So now I'm growing up on 58th, 57 South Low. So that's the Inglewood area of Chicago. So I'm growing up in the Woodlawn area on the east side of Chicago because now I'm on the south side of Chicago. So I'm growing up in the east side of Chicago and I'm growing up in the Inglewood area of Chicago as well. So now from this point, I'm learning the ways of my grandmother, my father's mother. She was, very church going. Her mother, um, which is my great grandmother, she came from a huge family. You know, um, my great grandmother's father, it was 14 of them.
Wow.
And my great grandmother, I think, had 17 children. So my grandmother is a sibling of a huge family as well. So on my mother's side of the family, her mother, it's one, two, three. Let me see, one, two, three boys and two girls. And then on my father's, his mother is 17 of them. So I'm stuck in the midst of big families.
Yeah.
And my great aunt that I was speaking on of Aunt Dump in Pepe's liquor store on 47 Cottage, that's actually my grandmother's sister. So and she has like one of the biggest families in this area that we call Motown in Chicago. She had 9 children, I think. Yeah, she did. She had 9 children as well. So you can just imagine out of 14 to 17 children, each one of them having 5 to 9 children apiece. We're huge in this city. So um family reunions should have been needed every year because somebody is having a new child and adding on to the family every year. I had another great aunt that lived on 61st, between 61st and 63rd of Cottage Grove. Those was like some townhome type places, but I think that they probably was, I don't know if they was public housing, but that was another area that I grew up in as well. That I used to have to, if I'm staying with my grandmother, I have to go over to her sister's houses. So whichever sisters out of her sisters that she has out of them 17 siblings that she likes to go over, I'm going over their houses as well. But my great grandmother house was the family's base on 63rd in Dorchester. You're doing any and everything to make money on your own without asking your parents. You have elder cousins or elder guys in the neighborhood that's selling drugs, so you making it a job to be on security for them, to holler out if the police coming. You making money that way. It can be up to $100 a day from the certain time. Um, you can make money from bagging up the drugs with them. You can make money for dropping off the drugs with them. So it was so many hustles that a child would have or that I had to where I accumulated so much wealth. So now at this point, I have to my problem was finding out where to stash this money at because every house I'm going to is multiple people living in them, you know, and then you don't want them finding your money and stealing your money or finding your money and telling on you. So I would take out the heater the heater we had heaters in the wall that go around go around the whole room, and I used to take the top off and stash my money in rubber bands all the way around the heater, to whereas my great grandmother used to wonder like, why is it still cold in here during the winter months? And it's because my money was stuffed in these heaters. So I lost a lot of money that way because the heat had crumbled the money up. So it burned, so I lost a lot of money that way because they trying to put the heat on high to warm the house up, and the house not being warm because I have all this money stashed in the heater wall. So I think my uncle found that money one time and told on me. So me and him got into it. We stayed getting into it with each other. And then it got to the point where my grandfather moved him and my aunt out to come live with him. But by this time, my aunt was off going to college, so she really was on her own. And my uncle stayed there probably his seventh and eighth year in grammar school till he graduated. And I think after high school, he moved somewhere too, or he went with my aunt and she moved to Alabama because she's a journalist. I have an aunt that's a journalist. So she seemed like she was just in school my whole life. That's all I knew of my aunt. She just was in school forever. And actually, that's who I wanted to write and help me write my book. But I didn't want to go through the process of me telling my truths and my story. And because it's about her parents and her relatives, she felt the need to not want to put it in the book. So I had to outsource someone else, you know what I'm saying, to help me complete my book. And but honestly, that's who I really would have wanted to do it with me because she shared these moments with me. She shared a lot of these moments. And when telling your tell all or your story, you do look for the validation of others that was there that witnessed it, because with me, I feel like it's more genuine that way. When you don't really somewhat have to tell your story, so other people can tell it for you, and it's just that validation that some look for. But I don't mind, speaking on my hardship and pain, you know, uh, the dysfunction. I don't mind speaking on it, you know. So from that point on, you old enough now, you raised around these street gangs and organized crime, and you learning from that family as well. So it keep being a brotherhoods that you learning from the YMCA, to boys clubs, group homes, um, to the street gangs that you entrenched into in your neighborhood. Whether you wanted to be a part of it or not, you living in this neighborhood, so you was a part of whatever that neighborhood was a part of vicariously by living there. So, if they come through drive-bys and shooting, if you standing out there with them, you just as guilty as being one of the members that the rivals is coming through looking for. So a part of my life as a youth that I went through so much before I even turned 13 years old sounds like a horror movie. You know, um, at this time, Michael Jordan's is very popular. Three-quarter length starter jackets was very popular. And I'm walking with one of my other cousins, older cousins, to walk his girlfriend to the bus stop. And some guys jump out and take his Bulls jacket. He had a starter jacket. They took his jacket. And at this time, I'm 10 years old. I'm a child. So I had a belt that was made with my mother name on it that was made in a penitentiary. The guys in the penitentiary was very creative. They made like belts out of cigarette carton packages. So it was a creative thing, but so I honored that belt because it had my mother name on the belt buckle. She really didn't want me to have it, but I was wearing it anyway. You know what I'm saying? And then that robbery happened. So I think that kind of made me callous and I never forgave them guys for doing that to us, because at the time I'm recognizing that I'm a child and you pulling a gun out on a child and you taking something from somebody that basically don't have no more than so at that point in time in my life I knew life was real, that they didn't care how old you was, how young you was. They didn't care. So from that point I didn't care, and that's when my life just spiraled out of control from that point. So me robbing, snatching jewelry, we used to have this place called Jewtown. We called it Jewtown. It was on 12th and Halsted. And this was a very popular area for like everybody in Chicago to come to Jewtown. You would get discounted clothing. It was similar to like Canal Street in New York, in Manhattan, places like that. And we would go there and store owners that would come there to buy whatever to stock their stores with would be there, shopping. And but they got nice watches, nice jewelry, and it'd be like 10 or 14 of us come from our projects. We walk down there in the likes of snatching their chains, and some guys were snatching purses and things of that. And I always was a child that had a conscience because I had mothers, I got sisters, I got aunties and grandmothers. So I never was into the purse snatching thing. That never was my thing. I always looked past that. But the chain snatching or the bag snatching, uh, I was with that. The breaking in the car, if I see the bags in the back seat, popping the trunk of the car, taking the bags out the back seat, out the trunk, which gave me a phobia because to this day I don't leave nothing in a car. You know, any problem that I ever had with a car, I don't, I don't mind because I know the terror that I done to people cars as being an auto boy. So we would be going to grammar school and IROCs and any Chrysler. They was easy to pill up. We used to call it peel. Every day we wanted to pill up a new car. Until a good brother of mine, Ronnie, he got shot. While peeling a car, because you always had to have one or two lookouts. And I was known for keeping a little trusty 32 or 38 pistol, that I came across out of one of them breaking and entries out of a car or a building or something. But I always kept some little guns, 380s. I had a great aunt of mine that made sure me and my cousin we kept a two-shot Dillinger. She, that we had because she knew that we was in the street, so we had to protect ourselves. And so I kept a pistol on me. So I would always, all the guys would always come get me anytime it was a fight, anytime we was going to just do anything criminal behavior, they would come get me. And I would be the watch out for him while he jump in the car and peel it up. And at this time, he was had his head down, peeling the car, and the guy came out and shot, and he threw his hand up and he got shot in the hand. So that was like a wake up call for us to say, okay, enough of the stealing the cars, just in residential neighborhoods, and we would start looking towards like mall areas. So we would go to like a mall parking lot and just steal the cars from there, because we seen that that was dangerous, just pulling up on blocks and stealing cars out of a neighborhood. But by this time, snatch out radios was very popular. The emblems on the top of the car was very popular, like Mercedes-Benz emblems on the top of a car. So usually if you go through any neighborhood that have Mercedes-Benz, the emblem on the top will be gone because we taking them and putting them on chains around our neck. To us, we wanted to emulate what we were seeing the ballers or the street guys that was doing in the street. They would stand on the corners fresh with these velour suits on and these big gold chains and briefcases, and that we seen that was cool. So instead of some of us asking them how they was getting their money, some would tell us, hey, I sell drugs, or it would be your cousin, it would be your uncle, it would be your father, it would be your brother, and you witnessing this stuff. So I remember uncle telling me like, man, if your father find out I'm teaching you this, he gonna kill me. And I was like, no, he ain't. He already know I'm getting money because I'm standing there fresh talking to him. I'm about, like I say, 10 years old. I got on a tie one jogging suit with some troops. That was the style at this point in time. And like I say, I got multiple hustles because I work with my grandfather, back to school. When it's time to go to back to school clothes, I got $5,000. He probably done already bought me 7 to 8 pair of new shoes from cleaning up the properties. And he'd take me to Sears at the time. And Sears, you had Zaire's, Goldblatt's, Woolworths. You had these clothing stores, 63rd and Halsted, 47. You had shoe stores and clothing stores. So I would go back to school with like 14 new outfits and 7 to 8 pair of new shoes and a pocket full of money. So once again, any penny candy store that we would have, I would come to school with big bags of candy and stuff, passing it up throughout the classroom. So I became a favorite by being able to be so gifting and giving. So I was likable and loved. I knew how to fight. So people would come help me with this fight or just make sure these person don't jump. Or we always had the thing is find the bully, beat the bully up, and you don't gotta worry about nothing. Hit the head, the body gonna fall. Home, you know, they taught us camping and karate, and I was a big avid fan of karate. I used to like watching all the Bruce Lee movies, karate movies. We were going, running to Goldblatt's and Sears and Zares, and they'll have TVs on display, and we would turn the TV to the karate channel and hide up under the clothes and watch the TV, the karate flicks, and then we would go in the aisles where it was food, and we'd take Doritos and open up the bags of chips, and we'd be in between the clothes watching um watching the TV show until the security come run us out of the store. And then it was times that because I knew my grandfather had bought my stuff and everything for school and back to school, my friends didn't have anything. So it's either I was gonna give them some of my stuff, or they said, well, we're gonna go up here and just run out the door. Just hold the door. We're gonna go grab 20 pair of pants, 20 shirts, stack them up, and run out the store. And that was another thing that we used to do. That was considered boosting. We'll run out the stores with coats, jackets, jewelry, anything that you can think of. That was just we was some bad little kids. Then at this time, we watching the TV shows at this time. You had Buckwheat and Three Stooges, and the type of stuff that they used to do on TV affected us as well. You know, but I really looked forward to movie night with my mom. Making the popcorn on the stove and sitting watching certain scary movies or certain things like that with her. So I really honored that, but I enjoyed it as much as possible. But once again, I'll be banked to somebody else's house again. So now I'm staying at a cousin or her best friend house. And one of my babysitters, KK, her son Timothy, I had pushed him off the third floor balcony, and she was done with me after that. But we was children. We up there wrestling around, and the banister was weak, and he went and fell off the third floor balcony and broke himself up. So she kind of like despised me from that point, because it's just like trouble was following me everywhere I go. Like, my nickname was Demon Boy. You know, um, as soon as a person see me, it's like cut the lights off. Don't open the door. It was that type of thing. He ain't staying over here. And from that point, I became a sticky fingers. Anything that I seen that wasn't nailed down, I had to have it. And then, the game room habit that I had, like I say, I would spend $100 in the video games. And I just feel like the store owners, they knew better. You seeing a child coming here breaking $100 bill trying to get quarters to play this video game. And instead of you saying where your parents at or be supervised to make sure this money didn't come from, you doing something wrong, they just allow it. And then like with Mr. Sykes, I was known for like quarter waters and sunflower seeds. That was my thing as a child. Anybody seen me, he eats some sunflower seeds. Or you'll know where I was at because you'll see a trail of sunflower seeds. So at this time, I was having nosebleeds as a kid, and I didn't know why, but I basically was having high blood pressure, evidently from eating all this salt with these sunflower seeds.
This us at 12 and 13 years old, 73rd in Dorchester, right? My man Jojo, always thinking. So he gonna sacrifice, right? Pocket full of money. We making us a little money. Like we shorties, but we get some money, right? The man will only eat sunflower seeds right there. Get $1 worth of candy. We're gonna get the now latest, go get the sunflower seeds. I'm talking about.
All I know.
We 13. Listen to them.
What's your memories?
My memories is when I tried to tell you not to buy that cotton coat, boy, he was like this. Man, I ain't buying one of them off the shelf. He was like, man, I'm finna go get it made. We walked to 71st Street. He had his own towel. Look, he had his own towel. Man, he come back, man, that mother was booming. I was like this. Player, you was right, man. Yeah, nobody else had that jacket.
That was the Batman and
that was
Robin.
the Batman and Robin.
Batman and Robin towel
sir.
coat.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
He was one of the first people to cuff Jay Boogie too, though.
Yeah.
When Jay Boogie was making he was one of the first people. We weren't messing with Jay Boogie. They were
Right.
going to mess with Jay Boogie out west.
Yeah.
Like, he was one of the first when Jay Boogie came on 79th. He was the first person like, man, go mess with my man Jay Boogie.
But much love to Miss Johnson. You know, we had a lot of people that came from the South that was living in a lot of our neighborhoods in homes, and she used to grow me sunflower seeds, but I used to have to wait until they harvest for me to eat them. But in the meantime, I get these sunflower seeds out the store from Mr. Sykes on 75th and Dorchester, and that's where the sodium was so high. And as I got older, you know, I kind of resented Mr. Sykes for that, because I felt like I'm spending all this money in this game room back here, and then my health is at risk eating these sunflower seeds. And I remember asking him at one point of me knowing about high blood pressure, and I said, "Would Mr. Sykes, would these sunflower seeds give me high blood pressure?" And he told me no. And in reality, it was just to sell me that box, you know. So from that point, to be honest with you, my trust issue with the elders went out the door. So I didn't trust the elders anymore, because I seen that if anything, they'll lie to me for money, you know. So from that point, it was time to graduate school. So I left John M. Smith out of the village, out the projects, and I came back on the east side to James Madison, and I graduated 8th grade. I actually don't know the exact time. I just know the times of my travels and moves and why. But the time span, I can't really say. Chicago kept being if something don't work in Puerto Rico, back to Chicago. New York, back to Chicago. LA, back to Chicago. I went into my freshman year of high school, to where is that by this time, like I say, I'm 13, I'm a millionaire. I had long hair, so it was a stage and time with Jojo with the braids. That's how you identified me, Jojo with the braids and the jewelry. So I had all this jewelry, had these cars, and the school teachers would get upset because my cars cost more than the cars that they was driving. At the time, I had Park Avenues, 98s, um, Blazers, Chevy Blazers. Um, yeah, for the most part, the BMWs. So I was driving these cars at this young age, Mercedes Benz, um, old school cars that we would call like Chevy Impalas, you know. And of course, I was amazed by the cars because, like I said before, my grandfather had custom-made Excaliburs and 59 Packards, and he always drove a Lincoln, you know. And then my grandmother, my great grandmother, she had a Buick Skylark. So my uncle would try to put rims on the car. And then I would take the car to the sound shop and get sounds put in her car. Because by this time now, I'm 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 15 with my driver's permit. But remember, he 4 years older than me. So it's like I couldn't have nobody I had all the money though. So I had to have somebody that was 21 with a valid license where I can drive. But I had been driving since 11 years old from stealing cars. The auto boys, when I became an auto boy. So from us stealing cars, I've been driving since then. So I always knew how to drive. So we would steal cars just to race and have fun, enjoy ride them. And eventually that caught up with me. And I caught a case with stolen cars. I caught a case with UUW, unlawful use of weapon, because remember I told you I used to keep guns all the time. And actually that was another time that the first time I got told on which made me despise snitches. I was in a game room we called a snack shop. And I was in there playing a game, and the detectives had pulled up, Hamilton and Davi. They had pulled up, and when I seen them, I tossed the gun behind the video game. So I already knew that once they come in, they just gonna search your body. But I'm looking through the camera, I'm looking through the window, and I can see a person that worked in the snack shop. I can see them pointing to where the gun at, giving the eye to the police. And then they, because they searched me, didn't find nothing. So I would have been done. But I'm watching this person look up and guide them to where the gun is. And they pulled the video game away from the wall and bent down and found the gun. So that was like my first gun case at 13 or 12. I was like 12 or 13. So that was my first UUW case. And from that point, once again, now my trust issues is just all out the window with people. Like I didn't trust nobody from that point because you snitching on me. You know that we in a gang banging era, gang banging neighborhood, and we have to protect ourselves. So it's like, why would you know, if we coming in here paying, and supporting your establishment, we have to protect ourselves. So why would you snitch on me? But I guess that was the pressure that the police had on these store owners, that, they told them, if you don't tell on them or help clean up the crime, we're going to take your establishment. So you think when you a store owner, you probably a person that was once in the street trying to clean your life up. So you out of the street at this point. So you want to, do the right things as well. So I kind of understood, if that was the case, but it rubbed me the wrong way, and it just made me despise a snitch. And my grandmother always despised snitches. She despised snitches with a passion. Yeah, it's a feeling that you would never get over. When somebody tattletelling, or as they would say, or stool pigeon. These are the words that I will always hear say: don't be a tattletale, never be a stool pigeon, and a snitch. So in my neighborhood as well, we had the Mosque Marion, which is Elijah Muhammad's mosque, which is ran by Minister Louis Farrakhan. So I would see the brothers, or when I would come from the village, he used to send buses over there for me. And it was like any of us that would come listen to him, to his speech, the brothers would give us tickets to go to this party called Lady of Our Sorrows. It was a church, but the brothers used to have like a social gathering party for the teens, like giving us something to do constructive instead of being in the street. So I used to use it like as a ride home. You know what I'm saying? Like I would go, and I'm getting a 2-for-1, not knowing. Like I would take this bus ride from the village to the east side to the mosque. I would hear the minister speak. And of course I got my weekend bags with me. And once I leave from listening to the minister's speech and I get my tickets, I just walk up the street because my house was right there on 75th Street. So from that point, I was being raised on both sides of the street, knowing right from wrong, and then religion wise, we never was forced to be in any religion, but I used to hear, like my grandmother would say, we Hebrews, and, let's go to mass and certain things. And then my great grandmother, she would go to church here and there. But my father's mother, she was faithful into the church every weekend. So I would always be, and this was Bishop Brazier, Apostolic Church of God, on 63rd in Dorchester, with my father's mother. That was the church that I would go to with the family. And Bishop Brazier and my grandfather, Wallace Brown, as coming up in the ranks, they used to battle it out over the Woodlawn area of who buying the most properties. So my grandfather owned that one property, I'm telling you, the 75 unit building on 68th and Dorchester, the yellow building. and he owned a hotel on Cottage Grove on 60, between 63rd and 65th. It was a hotel he owned, and he owned the Grand Ballroom as well. And then he owned another building on it was a hotel as well on like 64th, and would that be Kimbark? I think Kimbark. And I helped paint that. And it's funny because I ride past there and I have my vivid memories of these properties and me as a child cleaning up because I had older cousins that was in the streets real heavy, but they used to fight dogs. So pit bulls, so they would throw cats in there, the cruelty to animals, and I would have to come in there and clean up these dead cats and dead dogs. And like
Jeez.
once my grandfather found that's what they was doing, of course he punished them for that. But because I basically, I guess, had the heart to pick up these animals, that was ripped to shreds and dealing with that smell, that wasn't something that he wanted me to uh have to witness. But by me doing that, um by them having me do that, he paid me even more money. So at this point in time, I'm frantic. I know about ways to making money, so I always, my story be, well, how was work today? Oh, grandfather, it was, because I called him Pawpaw. Oh, Pawpaw, it was good, but I had to keep cleaning up these dead cat heads and these dogs, and they smell real bad. And, I'm sad. I love animals and I like animals. And, I wish you could tell him to stop. So then he would tip me. I would give more money. And I had a cat named Swinger. So one of his properties, I remember my mother, I guess, had made a statement that I don't want to move to his properties. She was hearing from somebody else like he was a slum landlord or something like that. But in reality, he was giving people places to be independent. He was giving them places. You just had to work, pay the rent, and you wanted stuff fixed, he'll fix it as you paying your rent. You don't pay the rent, he not fixing nothing. So they would try to build up on him and call him a slum lord. And I used to have a cat named Swinger. He was a black and white cat. But over there in this property, it was off the alley. So these rats was as big as gophers. They was like rabbits, they was so big. And one of the rats bit Swinger in the eye.
Wow.
So I always known like my great grandmother and them would have iodine in the bathroom cabinet, but Swinger really needed to go to the animal hospital and get some shots, some tetanus and rabies shots. And he used to swing from my mother drapes, so she used to get mad like, you getting rid of this cat. And Swinger used to swing from one side of the drapes all the way to the other, to where when the rats bit him, she got rid of Swinger. So I think I was on my rabbit phase from that point. So I just was having a house full of animals. I had my rabbits, my turtles, my fish, my Siamese twin cats. I had two twin German shepherds named Trigger and Trouble. And my dad used to have these safes. He had these safes buried in the ground at my grandmother's house. And Trigger and Trouble would go back there and dig up the ground. And then I looked up and came home one day and Trigger and Trouble was gone. So I guess, they was telling on his stash. So, bringing awareness to his stash, or where he was stashing his money in the ground. And I speak to my grandmother about that and was like, what happened to Trigger and Trouble? And they, in they mind, they'd tell me that they ran away. But from that point, I was, dealing with the Adi home. I was going to the Adi home a lot. Um, the Adi home is a juvenile detention center. So we call it like adolescent, but we say Adi home. So it was the Adi home. And I used to go to school in there and it was a school, a bad boy school called Montefiore. And I was red listed through all the schools in Chicago, like, I was a troubled child. So they pre stereotyping you before you even come to the place, so it was like all eyes on me everywhere that I went. And that made me uncomfortable because I wanted to be trusted as a child. I wanted to be trusted, but I was entrenched into so many things, you know, and it was kind of like, why nobody never asking me, why I'm this way, or, I would never get asked those questions. And from this point, I just, you know, was full fledged in the street, meeting older women, you know, or people that was high on drugs. I would have them, as aunties or uncles that can get apartments for me. So at 13 and 16, I'm having my own places, one on 66 in Maplewood as a kid. I had a king size water bed with the big floor model TV, as we used to call it, the big old 100 yard, the 100
Inch.
inch TV, so as this young child, I'm having women that was all older than me, interested in me. They used to always say, "Oh, we can't wait till you get older," but they wasn't waiting till I got older. I always say I could have done a tell all on that, that the innocence being taken from elder women and younger guys, but we thought that that was a macho thing as a young man, and elder women, and you being able to hang with this elder woman, meaning if you make her moan or scream or yell, that mean you well endowed, with your manhood. So a lot of times my friends, older sisters or mothers would whisper to me, spend a night, come spend a night, and they would have bath water running from me for me and lick me from head to toe. So I'm living around here like a king, so as a child and learning from my auntie, rest in peace, Cheryl, she was the first person that I heard say statutory rape and speak on something like that, because her elder friends or the elder girls, women that we used to have over at the house, when she come home for work and she just look at me and my cousin Bob and be like, why do y'all got these old women over here? And she never bit her tongue. She would speak out loud about that. I'm gonna call the police. Y'all over here robbing the cradle and this and that. But we thought it was macho. We felt like, man, you should want us to be dealing with these women. You know what I'm saying? But she was a real mother, man, and she cared for us more than anything, and she knew that that wasn't right. But like I say, I had a hell of a upbringing, of the rights and wrongs, and being raised on both sides of the street. I knew what to do and what not to do, you know, uh, from breaking into the juice factory to breaking into them trains and throwing rocks off the train tracks down into cars, people crashing their cars, just doing a bunch of mischievous, devious things as a kid, being a troubled child, you know. And then, I would have wanted to not go to Montefiore or to the Sullivan House, to these alternative schools and things of that nature, because I was very highly intelligent. And it meant a lot to me to graduate and things of that nature, because I never wanted my grandmother and them to feel like I dropped out of school or anything. But by the time I got to high school, like I say, I graduated at 13 years old. So I got all this big jewelry and these cars and mixed match Jordans, and I changed the dynamics of the school to where they printed out rules. And like, how they had a Jordan rule, how they had them two people sticking him so he don't make the point. I had the JoJo rule, and it was to the point where I couldn't wear mixed Mac Jordans. I couldn't wear my jewelry. I had to tuck my jewelry in. I couldn't wear braids. I had to take my braids down. So they wanted me to just wear a ponytail, which made me, I just cut my hair from that point, because it was like a bullying tactic to me, but they looking at it like I was a negative influence in the school with the children. You know what I'm saying? Because like I say, I'm parking these expensive cars on the lot next to the teachers. They jealous. So they hating on me. I'm wearing all this high-end clothing, you know, and they just didn't like that. So Dr. House was the disciplinarian of the school. And then, long live the coach, for the basketball team. He let me play ball, Coach Cox. He let me play ball, but up the street, we got a crack spot that's doing like 60,000 a day. Long live my good brother Mark Lee. We got a crack spot up the street. We making like 60,000 a day, sometimes 60,000 a week, depending. So it was kind of like hip hop was taking over at this time. I remember KRS One song, "Love Gonna Get You," and he had a verse, and he said, "I make about a G a week, F school." So a lot of people took that, and that was in the street and was really saying like, we making more than a doctor in a day. What a doctor making a year, we making in a week in some cases. So, you know, I like I say, I just grew up within these project communities, these housing communities. Then I'm in the bungalows on 40th and Cottage Grove, right up the street from the school. You able to make 10, 15,000 or better a day within an hour. You know what I'm saying? Before the police come hitting the building. So anywhere that I went, I was making sure I was able to tap into the drug trade and able to get me some money. So anywhere that I went, I made money in that neighborhood. And the drug of choice was heroin because I knew that, people needed that. They can stop smoking crack tomorrow, but that heroin was needed. So that's when you seen the bulk of your money, when you getting $100,000 a day, you know, and if your line really jamming, and if you got 3, 4, 5 to 6 dope lines, you making up to, in some cases when you hearing guys that made $1 million a day, it was possible, but it sound impossible until you really was doing it. So that was the life that I led. And by this time I'm 15 with my first children being twins, and I had two more sons before I was 16. So by 16, I'm a multi-millionaire with 4 children. So I was, like I say, I was raising myself, and from that point, the rest was history. By this time, 16 years old, I'm trying to juggle 4 kids, 4 children of mine, and school at the same time. So I'm dealing with court cases, from speeding and eluding, UUW cases, uh, trespassing cases, just everything, you know, um, when they created the lottering, they was lottering cases. I'm just putting up with all this stuff that society was just crashing down on me, as a teen. And I'm trying to figure my way. So I'm kicked out of King High School, Martin Luther King High School, and now I had to look for alternative schools, which were night schools. I went to night school, High Park Night School, the Sullivan House, uh, and eventually got the credits that I needed to go to an alternative school downtown Chicago, um, to graduate. So I was able to get my diploma. I didn't have to get a GED. So once I was able to get my diploma, I was satisfied from that point because I'd done what I knew my parents and grandparents and family would have liked and wanted from me, and that was to at least get a high school diploma. Now, from that point, I decided to, try to take a correspondence class in criminal justice. How ironic. But I was a felon twice by this age already. So I just felt like it was a lot of undue cases that was thrown upon me, and then seeing how the justice system worked, we really never had a fair chance with justice. It was like the guilty by being black uh, issues that I was dealing with, being a youth in the neighborhoods, poverty stricken, areas. They telling you can't hang out, you can't stand here, you can't stand there. And I had an Uncle Dickie that owned a liquor store on 73rd in Dorchester. So basically that's where I really set up my shop, and hustled from that point. Now, I run in and out the store, if the police was coming or hot because I had that family protection, to whereas that once I got too hot, of course, they was like, they didn't care about nothing. Stay out of here. And he was very stern on that. But as I'm building all this money and I'm asking him for his expertise, as well, because he had a laundromat named Duds and Suds on 69th or 70th in Dorchester. So him and my grandfather, Wallace Brown, they basically was heavy into the real estate and investing. So he owned this whole piece of property on 73rd in Dorchester. And it was like one, two, it was about four storefronts within this property. And he had the main big interest, which was a grocery store, liquor store, and then he had the rest. He had a laundromat next to it, and then there was something else next to it, and then a snack shop, which is where I mentioned that I caught my first banger case, as I would say, on 73rd Street. From that point, I'm shuffling back and forth from the west side in the village to the east side because at this point, my two oldest children living on the west side in the village still. The 16s, which was the buildings that I was from, was into it basically with the whole neighborhood, the 15s, the dog houses, uh, the animal courts. We had the tunnel and the Jane Addams. So throughout this whole community, the village would consist of 12th and Halsted all the way to 12th and Ashland. We considered that the village. So now my baby mother is living in the 15s. So I would have to try to get to visit my children during this war. And it's hectic because bullets flying every day. Every time you step out, your life is on the line. So we would leave the 16s and go to the tunnel, which was on Loomis. And we'll basically hold fort right there under the tunnel. So a lot of the guys we went to school with, we knew of, because it was Roosevelt Road, we called it the road. So a lot of us would hang out in front of the store on the road. It really was only two main stores between Racine and Ashland that whole community visited. So it was impossible to not run into each other. A lot of times the stuff could be over women for the most part, or the drug trade, who could sell where, who can't sell here. That created the wars. Now, my mother, Braveheart, bullets flying everywhere. She running out. I can hear her screaming my name. And I was saying to myself, I have to get from over here quick because if I don't, myself will lose my life or my mother will lose her life because she coming from me, regardless to what's going on. And I couldn't see myself putting her in that situation because when I tell you it was shots, hundreds of shots at a time going off, and all I can do is hear my mama screaming my name to the top of her lungs when she hear these gunshots. I'm like, I can't keep putting her through this. So it's either gonna be one or two things. I'm gonna have to just go back to the east side because I gotta hold it down, with me and my crew here in the 16s. I can't abandon them. And then I don't want my mother in the midst of what's going on because she was living in the building of the opposition's headquarters. This was their building. So now it was like you had to pick sides, you know, choose your side, who you gonna be with. But it really wasn't so much of picking sides because once they knew you was already hanging in this certain building, if you hanging in 1111, then 1209 not rocking with you. 1239 not rocking with you. But 1239 and 1209 basically would be against 1111, which was the building that I was in. So now that meant that 1111, we had to get past 1209 to make it to the tunnel to be in our safe zone. You know, that was where we can feel a safety net under the tunnel. But it still was no way around walking past the opposition buildings if it was wartime. The only thing was bridging the gap was family members. And it really made it hard on the families because you don't want your cousins being hurt. So of course you resort to saying whatever difference it is, we can box it out, you know, and you can live to see another day. But then you always had those radicals in the neighborhood that wanted to just resort to the gun violence. So that was the issues that we had in Chicago a lot, that it wasn't like a lot of guys didn't want to fight. We was all willing to fight, but it was always those that I would consider cowards with guns that wanted to bring the guns to play because they wasn't good at fighting. So now I make the decision to say, okay, well, I'm gonna leave. I'll just go back on the east side, which put a strain on me and my children's mother because I'm begging and pleading to her, like, listen, if you saying you love me, you gonna do whatever it take to keep our family together, you know, and come to the east side where I don't have to try to risk my life coming to visit my children or have you in the midst of this gunfire and this war that I'm entrenched in. So she said she understood, but she really didn't because she still expected me to come down there. And me being a young, fearless guy, I would go down there anyway in the heart of the war until I couldn't put my brothers' lives in danger to try to come secure me to go down to this building where they know that I shouldn't be going in the first place, regardless to what. So I had to make that drastic decision to say, okay, you know, I can't come down there no more. You know what I'm saying? So I moved back on the east side. And for a while, she would bring my children to come see me, or I would, you know, pull up over there to her building in different cars. And I have my little cousins, Munch and Bass, run inside her building and get the kids or drop off school clothes or things of that nature, or I would take them to their school and drop the clothes off at the school, and then she can just take it from that point, and I would switch up cars as I was doing that. But then they caught a whiff of that and figured, you know, because you got to think these buildings are on security. So every car that pull up, if you're not a customer of theirs, you know, then that means you either a visitor or you could be a potential rival of theirs. So I'm pulling up in all these different slick cars. Some cars would be tinted windows, some would not. So by my cousins being younger, they would look younger while they was going inside of the building and people knew they wasn't familiar faces. So they was able to pull it off. And like the last time that I tried that, they was coming out the building 100 strong, shooting at the car. You know, they had a poster of me because I had sent a poster of myself, a portrait to my baby mother upstairs by my cousin to put inside the house so my children would at least be able to see me daily from this photo. And the guys came running out the house, so I guess they figured out or followed my cousin up to where he went, and they went in there and got the poster, and they was coming out with the poster, chasing him back towards the car, shooting, guns blazing. So we got out of there, and I knew that that was the end of that for me. Uh, so that was, you know, something that I really had to deal with that was hard on me. I said I take this time to finish school, go downtown, finish school, get my diploma, and try to look for a way out of the streets because My grandmother is upset, my great grandmother upset, the family upset, everybody just they worrying about me a lot. Um, I'm a knucklehead, I'm hard headed, I'm not trying to listen, and I was fearless. I fear nothing. So my mother would always tell me, if you go to jail, I'm not coming to visit you. And she meant every word, because when I did go to jail or get locked up from the Adi home to the county jail, uh, she never came to visit me. But my great grandmother Medea had had surgery on her knees, and she would come visit me and bring me things to the Adi home, you know, at the time. And I felt bad because I can look out my window and see the visitors coming to visit, and I would see the struggle that it took her to get there to come visit me. So I kind of like said to myself, this is something that I never put her through again. After this visit, I just tell her she don't have to come visit me no more until I come home. And my children, when my baby mother was pregnant, her like like when it was time for lockup, like 9 o'clock or whatever time lockup was, they would come down to the Adi home and scream up to the window, and I would flip my bed up against the wall, and I can look out and I can see them. During this time, we was wearing airbrush clothing, like t-shirts with airbrush. So she got this big old belly and with my name on it, and I'm looking out the window like, man, I hope I can be home in time for my children, to be born. I see all my good brothers, Scooby, uh, all the girls from the building that came, whoever, a part of my crew that came to visit, they would have to walk down there and shout out up to my window. And of course, when they leave and go back, I could only just like wave or get their attention to see that I can see them before the guard walk past and catch me up there and take my desk out my room, or take the bottom part of the bed so you couldn't flip it up. So I used to have to be careful with that. And then I was just telling myself that whenever I come from up under this situation, I'll never go back to it again. And actually, they made me fight this case in a juvenile detention home till I was 21 years of age, because we had a St. Charles. When you got to a certain age, I was on a county deck. It was a county deck in the Adi home. So you would see guys that look like full grown men, but you thinking, how are they in this juvenile detention center? And that was because it was a a, a, a county deck for teenagers that was 17 to 21 that was fighting violent crimes. So they was being housed in that same building. They went to school on the south side of the same, in this same facility. So a lot of times when the brothers would get banked to St. Charles DOC, which was what we called it, when they was getting banked to St. Charles, Illinois, we would like kick off a riot inside of the juvenile facility. It was just like an all-out war, because we was upset that our good brothers was leaving and things of that nature, just wilding out. They'll lock the building down. I had the guy, Mr. Johnson, that was a good friend of mine, Aaron's father. Um, he was from the east side. So I kind of had it good. I had some mentors that worked inside of the building that knew me from the streets. So, Mr. Johnson would say, I get paid to come here. You know, got to straighten up your act. He would give me that pep talk. I looked at Mr. Johnson. He was super cool. He would let me come out, clean up the deck at night. That way I can get extra peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and milk and things of that nature, like whatever foods that was left over, I can make extra sandwiches and things like that. So I didn't want to get comfortable with that, knowing that I had someone that I knew from the streets working in there. So that gave me a, a, some comfort. I can watch the TV or have my room move down closer to the TV room. And it's like, if I made myself comfortable in this facility, I really wasn't understanding the penalty that I was, wasn't paying attention to me straightening up my act because I'm in here making myself comfortable with this stay, which wasn't a good thing. I was supposed to be there to learn from my mistakes, but instead I'm in here, learning how to make this stay easier for myself. But once I got out of there, I figured no looking back. And by this time, this how the courts would do you. They would hold you inside, until you turn 21 years old. That way, you getting charged with adult crimes from that point on. So I'm knowing that it's a must I change my life to the fullest. So by this time I graduate and my housing is better for myself. I'm out on my own, taking care of myself, looking for investment properties, things to invest in. I would ask Uncle Dickie, the ropes or show me the ropes of doing a laundromat. At the moment, he told me it didn't make sense because the water bill would be so high that you really wouldn't profit much. But so that made me stray away from that. And then my grandfather always said, if you don't do nothing else, get you some property, something you can always fall back on, which I understood because that was his pride and joy, you know, the real estate. So I dibbled and dabbled in the real estate, but at the time, my cousin Cole Black, he come to me and asked me to invest in him in his music career. So at this time, I'm going to Freaknik, Jack the Rapper, Daytona Beach, all of the music events, Cancun, um, all of these music events that was going on. So I'm running into Nas, Puff Daddy, uh, Cash Money, No Limit, Bad Boy Records, Death Row Records. I'm running into these guys at these events, the Source Awards. So now, playing in my mind, my cousin saying support him with the music. I'm coming to his talent shows and he's winning. So I have a conversation with some good brothers of mine, T Berry and Shorty B, about the music industry starting a label. So now it was like I had to come up with a name, incorporate the name, get a entertainment attorney, and then go from that point. So I'm like, okay, bet. I go to New York. I'm talking to Puff. We out there gambling. We at the Trump Tower. So I'm still heavy in gambling. We in the Trump Tower. And I form a crew. My first group being Mind, Body, and Soul. Two of the members from the Ida B. Wells projects, and one of the members from Sircon City, which is Cole Black, my little cousin. So I make them a group. They do 9 songs. They record 9 songs. So when I go to New York, I play these 9 songs for Puff Daddy. Shine was there. Uh, um, Mark Curry was there, and Puff doing his little Diddy bop. So now I got a smirk on my face because I'm like, okay, if he doing his little Diddy bop, I know that I got what it take. So now I know that, okay, he said, keep going. You got you something. So now I knew I had to go and shoot the videos. So now my music hat is on. I'm like, okay, I got to reach for the stars with this now. So I come back to Chicago and I got to find out who would I use to, create and shoot these videos for me from the songs that we picked. And I got features from Twista and Shauna. They was huge artists in Chicago at the time. And I did a feature with them on the Mind, Body, and Soul project. The Home of Capone was the name of the album. So I put that together. Get to the project, shoot the video. I had the Oprah Winfrey uh, production team pull up in our project, something that never been done before. So everybody looking like it's Harpo Studios, all these trucks pulling up, like what's going on? They like, is they about to shoot a movie or what? And unbeknownst to them, here come JoJo. I pull up, the BMW truck had just came out. I think the X5. So I pull up, I call my cousin Kobe. She got the big rock wireless. So I'm like bringing them through the video shoot. And we have a video called Get That. Get That was the featured single that was shot in the Ida B. Wells. Well, rest in peace, Rello, Cold Black, and C Note. So that was the first video that I put out. And then second video was Who the Hottest. Now tragedy struck within that first video due to jealousy. Rello caught himself, trying to mix and mingle with some guys that didn't really rock with him like that. It probably, whatever that he was dealing with them, it was a trickery to get him around them so they can do bodily harm to him. So I knew Rello had wanted this more than anything. This something he prided himself on being an artist. So the night after the first video, Get That, he like, man, Joe, I got a confession. I'm like, what's going on? So he was like, man, I'm excited. I actually thought that was gonna be like some camcorders or something when you said we was gonna shoot the video. I didn't know this production was gonna be this huge. You got the Oprah Winfrey show in here. And I was like, yeah, I reached out to Sam McQueen. Sam McQueen was the producer, one of the producers of Oprah show. And he talked to Oprah and he was like, I have a good friend of mine. He want to shoot some videos and use the cameras. Now at the time she had $1 million camera. The lens alone was $1 million. So I had to pay a huge fee, for this rental. So he convinced her to let her do it. And she telling him, do you know where you going? And he like, yeah, but I've been over here. I took meetings with JoJo and I feel safe and I know that we will come back in one piece. So I salute Oprah Winfrey for that, for allowing Sam McQueen to use her equipment to come shoot my first music video to help me launch my music career with my group and for my label. So the next day we was gonna be shooting Who the Hottest. Cause by this time I'd informed 9 group members to the label and had like signed 9 artists. So I rent out a club and I get there and everybody, we beeping and trying to call around to find Rello because nobody heard from him since the night before and nobody is able to reach him. So the clock is ticking. So we shooting a video, but by the time his verse come up, he's still not there, still haven't answered. So I just got a weary feeling like something ain't right. So when his verse came, I had to do the stand-in for it. So by the time I complete the video and the video is edited, I'm really lip singing his verse, to complete the visual so we can wrap everything up with Oprah and Sam McQueen and her equipment. I had to complete this process. So the following day, we get the call that Rello was found murdered in a bathtub on State Street in one of those apartments, shot 5 times. So my mind is racing, everybody upset. We have to get prepared for his funeral. His mother was sickly at the time. So we really didn't know where to start and who was going to handle that situation with Rello, and in the midst of that, we lose Cold Black to a asthma attack. So now I just feel like I'm trying to do a good thing, and help them with their music career, but everything is crumbling around me. And Cold Black died. So on the height of us trying to release this project, he's not here to be able to promote it, and tour or do anything because we lose him. Then this happened with Rello. And then 6ix9ine 99 on our way coming, going to Cancun and coming back, I lose my brother Bay, and that rocked my world, because the closest people were around me was passing mysteriously, and I wasn't understanding what was really going on. So I didn't know if to keep going further with the music or just leave it behind. But I knew I couldn't do that because everybody had put their all into it. Everybody had got tattoos of the label on their arms with their group logo and with their group names attached. And I felt I had to keep the ball rolling. So from that point, I took C Note since two members was missing from Mind, Body, and Soul, which was the first original group, Cold Black and Rello. I had to put C Note in the group with the Global Gangsters, which was Pistol Pete, Chachi, Big Blast, Black Rose out of Sircon City. So I basically merged a member from Ida B. Wells with Sircon City and formed the Global Gangsters. So that gave C Note some added brothers from two brothers that he's lost previous doing music with. And now the ball is rolling. My label is popping. These events is coming up. We pressing up these CDs. I get a deal with some brothers, a distribution deal with some brothers out of New York. And they had just deal with Juvenile for his independent label. And I felt that they was some people that it was cool to do business with since Juvenile was already a popular artist and he did an independent deal with them. So I followed suit. So with Juvenile. And now the project is out. It's in the stores. We doing in-stores at George's Music Room, the record shop on 35th Street, the other record shop on 87th Street in Chicago. So we're buzzing. My name is ringing everywhere. The videos is out. And now a, a tour comes up for the Clips. And the Clips give me the opportunity to do a 36 city tour with them in the Global Gangsters. So the music business was looking up for me at this time. But I'm still crushed and sad because critical members has passed that was a part of the group and a part of the label. Quitting wasn't an option. We go out, we do the 36 city tour, we come back, everybody happy. Uh, Pistol Pete was one of the flagship artists of the label. They watching his videos on Smack DVD in Def Jam building, 50 Cent requesting to sign them. Rick Ross did a song with us. Jeezy trying to do a joint venture deal with us. But in my mind, we were still staying independent, like No Limit, Rap a Lot, Rough Riders, Cash Money, had taught us, like to just stay independent. So my whole point and purpose was keep all of them in a group, like the Wu-Tang Clan. And if deals came to pick them apart, we would deal with that when it happened. So Pistol Pete was the youngest. He had the biggest buzz, and that's who I was pushing, and that's who I was running with. So we got to the point where after the tour, everybody was like, okay, we can do solo projects and this and that, this and that. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll support y'all to the fullest, you know? But I was drained at this time because it's like, okay, we stand independent. The record labels, they either gonna offer you a lot of money or they gonna try to jerk you out of your publishing. And I knew I wasn't going for that, so I was only interested in doing distribution deals with any of them. The radio stations, it was a pay-to-play payola type of situation. Um, I always felt that being independent, you needed all the money that you had, so to put into the mixing, the mastering, the recording part, or if you get called to do a tour, you got to fund all this stuff out of pocket. So you really don't have all these extra funds that everybody wants you to grease their palms. You saying, hey, help me get to the situation where I can get the big bag, and then I make sure everybody cool, because I know the people that really helped me launch my career from that point, because you know the people that's got your songs in rotation. You know the program directors, you having meetings with the DJs, so we was bubbling so hard in the street and on the DVD circuit by me partnering with Smack DVD. I always had a huge outlet for the global gangsters to showcase their talent. And by Smack DVD being a big DVD magazine on the East Coast, it gave the global gangsters a fan base on the East Coast, with them being from the Midwest, Chicago. So I did a spinoff DVD called the Chicago version. Me and my little brother Will Gates, he had just graduated Columbia College, in film. So it was himself, Morocco Vaughn. They was graduates of Columbia College in film. So I said, okay, I'm building my team, a strong team at this point, of videographers, video directors, movie directors. We have Hood, Hood Films from Sircon, a college graduate. So I had three prominent people on my team that can help me bring the visuals to life for these records that the artists are putting together. And we shooting many movies at the same time. One of the first movies we did was called Arab Money, the movie. And we didn't complete it, but we was just ahead of our time on seeing the route to go with this music, and having to do any and everything to help market and promote from an independent standpoint. But we dealing with the mixtapes. You can't make money, you can't profit off mixtapes. But the bootleggers was making a killing off the mixtapes. They was the only ones able to really make money off of the mixtapes. And it was like after our last mixtape that we done, because we had the popularity at this time, I was saying, okay, now we can put a full length project together so we can all make money from it. Because I'm just shelving out all this money at this point. I'm over $1 million and just trying to learn the game, paying out, you know? So I said, okay, it's time to get this money back now. And by this time, everybody, thought it was a bright idea to start going solo and doing solo projects. So I was like, okay, bet, cool. But I can't let the label fall to the wayside because everybody want to, go their separate ways or do separate things. So I got in the booth myself and became an artist. And I kept C Note with me. And I basically had Mind, Body, and Soul was the first group. Then I formed the Global Gangsters. And then I formed the Young Circs. The Young Globals. I formed the Young Globals, the Young Global Gangsters, which would be Chief Bass, VZ, Squally Man, we call them, Haitian Gangster, them three. And I kept C Note and myself. So we put out 2 projects, Negative Press and Passport Gang, for the Global Gangsters. And after that, I did solo projects, um, Talk That Shit Capone, Boss Life, They Talk It, I Live It. And that's it. Yeah, I think I did two solo projects, but 4 total with the Global Gangsters featuring Chief Bias and C Note. So I did Negative Press, um, Passport Gang, And then I did solo projects, Boss Life, They Talk It, I Live It, and Talk That Shit Capone. After that, Rich Gang was formed with Cash Money. And that was because my family, they're my family members, Birdman and Slim, are my blood relatives. So I always had a open invitation to be, a part of whatever they had going on. And like I said previous, I learned the game from them, the independent game in the music industry. So once I done as much as I can do independently on my own, your next step is to go to a major. So that was my transition of going to a major vicariously through Cash Money Records. So the last two projects uh, that I done with C Note and Chief Bias, I had the okay to utilize the Rich Gang tag for our music. And after we completed those projects, I done my own projects solo to keep the label thriving and going as well. And from that point, I've been off to the races with the music, and I decided that it was time to still stand independent, that I didn't go to a major. 6 year, 10 year span. So between like a 9 year span, all of this is going on. I've been investing my money into this business for over 20 years at this point. So I knew how to rap. That just wasn't what I chose to do. So once the group members wanted to go solo and do other adventures and do things on their own, I decided to not let the label fold and let the movement fold, put it on my back and keep it moving. And that's what I done. Well, the early ones was the Freak Neat, Jack the Rapper, what was that? Myrtle Beach, Virginia Beach, Daytona Beach. Then that morphed into Cancun. So that was like the parties, Memorial Weekend type situations. It was hip hop events. It was hip hop events. That was like what was that? Party promoters like Puff Daddy would throw events, and then it was word of mouth to where you go to Georgetown, and the boxing matches within that as well was Vegas. So Mike Tyson was the man, so it meant a lot to catch all the Tyson fights. And each time you went to these events, someone was there basically promoting the next event. Are you going here? Are you going to go there? And then from that point, you would write the dates down and the locations, and that's how you knew when it was up to the time of that event. Then you just went and checked it out. It was like bike week, so people was riding a lot of motorcycles in Myrtle Beach and Georgetown, Virginia Beach. It was a lot of motorcycle crews. So it was a lot of crews that rode a lot of motorcycles, and it'd be bike week. It would be called bike week and bike weekend. So you would go to those as well, because it was always going to be a nice crowd of people, and difference of people. Like if you go to anything on the East Coast, being from the Midwest, you're going to run into a lot of East Coast people. Now, when you came to Atlanta for Freaknik, Jack the Rapper and things like that, you're going to run into a lot of the Southern cultured people. Then you always had the Mardi Gras. So we would take a party train from Chicago, the Amtrak. We would take and we called it the party train. And we would take the Amtrak to New Orleans every year. And then of course you had the All-Star game. So you had the All-Star game. So you had multiple events that you can choose to go to throughout the year. That was early on. So you really wasn't interested or had no knowledge of that, like landmarks and things of that nature. It was just more so the accents of people that stood out and was different. So you knew, like, coming from the Midwest, if you ran into somebody from Baltimore, we would be like, oh, they sound funny. You know, this was your time of noticing the difference of accents. So that was a thing. You know, you're a guy from Chicago, you meet a woman from New York, she had a different accent. She tell you she loved your accent. So now as a young man that's into women, you just, chasing accents. So you got a girl from Memphis. You got a girl from Mississippi. So it's different slangs and different cultures. And that's what's, at the time of communication, you got your beepers, you got beepers, then you had time ports, then your cell phones. So that way you was able to communicate and keep in touch with people, and you just knew about area codes. So at this point in time, once you knew an area code, you knew where this person was calling from. So now, of course, you have Google and everything and GPS. So it's nothing for you to know that. People don't even know numbers anymore. You used to have to memorize numbers then. You don't have to memorize them now. You just store the name and call it when you think of that name. Now you meeting their brothers and their cousins, and you seeing what they involved in and what they into. And half of that helped me get throughout 50 states. You know what I'm saying? Because the women was in college, so you might have went to visit them during a break in college and seen what the college life was like if you wasn't one that went to college. So, you had a vehicle or the means to fly to them, and you get there and they show you the town that they in going to school. So, or like I say, Cancun helped with a lot of that as well, because people from all over the 50 states would go to Cancun. Beach wise, I always been a good swimmer, so that wasn't never the beaches wasn't the attraction. It was the event that was the attraction, like to where it was going to be artists and athletes at these events. So that was the first time that everybody intermingled that way. So if you went to Cancun, you was going to see the biggest rapper, the biggest singer, the biggest athlete. They would be at these events. So, or if you went to the All-Star game, you're gonna see all of the athletes. Then they came with CIAA. It's the event, that was going on down in Charlotte. So it was a bunch of prominent doctors, lawyers, judges, and everybody, and that was a big event to meet people of that magnitude. So that's another event that I left out, CIAA. And so each event had its, of course, if you go into the islands, you hearing different accents again, and you seeing different cultures, but you can go to the island, as they call it, Hispaniola, which is Haiti, but you got two groups of people. You have a group of people that's African speaking French Creole, and then you got another side of the island that's speaking Spanish. So it's just letting who came and conquered that island at the time, because they leave their languages. That's the main thing. I've always had a enormous love for history, because it's like a sense in me told me that I was being led down the wrong path when it came to history. And it's like it made me have a hunger for more. And I just kept digging and digging until I found the truths and what made more sense to me, to where I am today. So I've always been a person that wanted to go to the beginning, like the root of everything, and then it sprouts out. So long as I'm in tune with the roots of everything, then I do my searching from that point. I've actually been to 40 African countries out of 54. And I think I'm at 27 of the 48 Asian countries. And Europe, I have to count those. Yeah, you would go to all the safaris, and certain things can be repetitious, but one thing about Africa is really due to it being broken up the way that it has been, within 54 countries, it's actually 54 different cultures of each country, and they all have some amazing stories, and when the landmass was just a Pangea, when it was just one landmass, basically Africa and Asia was together as one. And then once it split from weather the earthquake or whatever shattered the earth and done that, and it split at the bottom, which left you Madagascar, which is the oldest island in the world. But Africa was here, Asia here, and at that end point left Madagascar. So you just learn all these geographical terms and continents, and you're able to witness these things from reading or hearing about them. So that's my hunger for knowledge, that I don't want nobody to tell me nothing about anything. I want to go search it for myself, and you have a lot of people that want to shelter you from that. They don't want you to go learn the truth, which makes me go even further. South Africa, Southeast Africa has the original bloodline of human beings. So, South Africa, you had the Khoisan, which I was about an 8-hour drive from them when I was in even Zimbabwe, I believe. And I was like 8-hour drive from them in the bush. And I found that out after I was getting dropped off at the airport. And I'll never forget, I was so upset at the driver because the whole time I was in South Africa, he seen that I was digging for this type of information. And out of everything we talked about and all the time that I had to be there, I had enough time to go see these people. So when he told me, as dropping me off, he was writing down names and tribal names and stuff like that. As he writing and jotting this down, I don't know what made him mention, oh, the Khoisan. And I'm like, the Khoisan, what you mean? And he was like, they like 8 hours away. And I said, why would you wait? I was furious. Why would you wait all this time when you see the journey that I was on? So that I was pissed off about that. But I was right there with the Khoisan tribe of people. And then from that point, that's what made me go to Ethiopia. So to go to Ethiopia, and then I went to Lalibela, and seeing those stone carvings, when back then they didn't have no, chainsaws and all that type of stuff, and basically was just building these artifacts within the mountain with whatever they had. It's incredible. Like that, now that's breathtaking. One of the safaris, I was in South Africa, and I seen the first dog, the lineage of a dog. And it would be spotted every 7 years, and I was able to see it. So that meant something. That'll stick with me. It reminded me of like a hyena. It looked like a hyena, but that's the original dog. So where dogs come from, that lineage of that. But I spotted it, and it was being able to be seen every 7 years. So I don't know if I was in Senegal or South Africa. I was in one of them safaris, but to come out of your house and come out of your room and these big wildebeests right there is massive. They huge, man. Just monkeys right on the bar as soon as you open your door. And traveling and experiencing animals is a love that I had. Like the toucan Sam bird on the Fruit Loop box is native to Costa Rica. So I was able to see that. And then Costa Rica have some howler monkeys. They're about this tall, but they sound like gorillas. The male has a deep voice, and it sounds like a gorilla, but he about this tall. They walk up to you and you feed them, So when you hear that noise, I think I was in Thailand, in Bangkok. I was in a cage with the lion, with the tiger, and I walked with the lions in Madagascar. We had walked amongst with the lions. They huge too, about 13 feet tall, babies, and they was young. Um, so I done that in Madagascar and Mauritius, but that I did that in Madagascar. What's that? The giraffes was in giraffes was in giraffes a lot of Senegal. Was that Senegal or Senegal? The giraffes is mainly all throughout Africa. You'll see some giraffes. You'll see different breeds too. Where was I just at and saw some giraffes? And see it, you start thinking because I've been to so many countries. Then I swam with the sharks.
Oh, tell me about that. That's wild.
Now that was the adrenaline junkie through the roof. Like I had done everything you could do with the animals. Like I did. I rode the camel in Dubai and in Egypt. I rode the camel across the pyramids in Egypt. They even got camels in Mexico now. They ship camels everywhere. I swam with the dolphins in the Bahamas, I believe. No, Hawaii. I swam with the dolphins in Hawaii. I swam with the sharks. Oh wow, I swam with the sharks in Hawaii too. So yeah, I swam with the sharks and the dolphins in Hawaii. If you put fear in your heart and in your mind, everything will scare you. And I consider myself a fearless person. I'm not scared of heights and things of that nature. So I think told myself in my mind that these is just fish. They dangerous fish, but I think bucket list wise, I can't go no further than that. That was the ultimate because I rode elephants in Thailand as well. Elephants in Bali. I rode elephants. So I seen how it felt for to hear the story of the guy, the African warrior that took the rode the elephants from there to Rome. Uh, I can't think of his name at the moment, but it was him and his brother, Hannibal. So I was able to live out a Hannibal moment, riding the elephant, but he took elephants, during the back in them days to go to war. And that's how he, basically scared the people where he went because they never saw this before. Um, so yeah, giraffes. Oh, I was in Kenya. Kenya when I was feeding the giraffes. I ate breakfast with the giraffes. They have a resort in Kenya that you can eat breakfast with the giraffe. So like if my plate and table right here, and then if I open the door, this window, he stick his head in or she stick her head in and they eat with you. So you eat breakfast, feed them. So everything with animals that I can think of, I have done in a safari, in the cage with the tiger, swam with the sharks, swam with the stingrays, swam with the dolphins. So that's about all you can do. The only thing that you would fear is being shot or shot at, you know,
for the most part, because you think you got control over everything else, but you don't have control over a person's mind if they trying to come do harm to you. I never had that problem. I always moved like a one-man army, you know. And actually, when I get there, uh, they 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 actually secure me. You know what I'm saying? When I'm there to do whatever it is I want to do. Like wherever I want to go, it's always an abundance of people that's willing to assist me, you know, and happy to see me. Like it's like as if I lived there before and I'm just coming back and they happy to see me. So I've always got a warm embrace. Just like right now in Asia, I went to 6 countries for my birthday. I went to Cambodia, Vietnam, North and South Korea, Mongolia, China, and I'm probably missing one. No, that's it. So that was a nice experience. I mean, you're gonna see multiple temples. So you'll see multiple temples. And even though, you know, that's the continent of Asia, you know, each one of those countries speak a different language as well. But the people was very welcoming. You know, you didn't feel out of place, you know, things of that nature. Just like when Africa, you know, they'll invite you into their houses. Or if it's in the bush, they'll invite you in the hut to feed you, you know. So I don't know the bad stigmas that was taught to us over here in America about them foreign places, but it's the total opposite. They going on their third passport already. So yeah, my thing with the children was to take them on cruises because they can cover multiple ground, you know, and now they to the point where they saying we don't want to go on no more cruises, so they just picking spots to go to. So I usually allow them to just pick where they want to go, and we go like that. For Mexico, let me see, because they like I say they on their second passport right now. So Mexico, all of the islands, they want to go to Fiji Island now. So I'm thinking of taking them to Trinidad, Fiji, and some more. So once they do those 3, I think they have been completed all of West Indies and all of islands. French Polynesia, Tahiti, um, Bora Bora, Maldives, all of that area. Well, it's giving them experience of travel, you know, so they won't be a group of children that's scared to fly, you know, because so many people scared to fly and scared to travel. So they're aware now of how long a flight is and the things, you know, I give them tips like every 2 hours, stand up, walk, stretch, you know, watch you some movies, you know, you get 3 meals, and before you know it, you either transferring planes or you didn't reach your destination. It mean a lot to me because I'm a child that was raised in the ghettos of America and beyond. So by me being born and raised in projects, you know, the extreme poverty of America, and to be able to become to see, you know, majority of the 195 countries it is in the world, and 6 of the 7 continents that I've completed, you know, it's it's something that you can barely explain the feeling, you know. So I only have one more continent, and that'll be Antarctica, and I'm gonna finish that and complete that this year. So that way, I've done all 7 continents, I've done all 50 states, and I'm over the 150 something countries out of 195. And I'm trying to, you know, have a pilot shot to do a travel show. So I'm just waiting on these networks to, you know, give me the offer and let me know if it's a going green like the show. And that's how I really wanted to complete the rest of the countries. by doing it on the travel show. Philanthropy, you philanthropist, activist, world traveler, the life coach. One that know what a philanthropist do and one that know what a motivational speaker and a life coach do is self-explanatory. Activism as well. You trying to clean up those impoverished neighborhoods, and you're able to let them know that it's something bigger in the world than what they know on their block and in their neighborhood. And I'm a prime example of that. So I'm able to speak to them, without just telling them something. I can show them as well, and they know that I'm speaking from experience. I'm not speaking just to be speaking, because I once was that child on that block stuck in that neighborhood. So therefore, that's why they listen to me. And I have a consulting company and things of that nature. So when they call me, they know they calling me to get the correct answers, or, for me to guide them the best way in life, from my experiences. So you always had a choice as well. You got the right and you got the wrong. So you either straddle the fence and walk in the middle to where which was me. I was interested in both. I'm highly intelligent. I wanted to be on the right side of the street, but your relatives and family so close to you, it's a fine line that that the ones that's veering off to the left, they right there, and you interested in what they doing, and you want to ask them why are they doing those things, and then they show you, and if what they show you has some interest to you, there it is. Excuse me. So you catch yourself on that left side of the street with them, and as they say, you play with fire, you get burned. So eventually, that wrong side of the street can run out for you, or unless you gracefully bow out beforehand. But with the knowledge of the sins, greed, glutton, envy, jealousy, things of that nature, once you're aware of those things, you already know nothing of what you're doing gonna last forever. And it's the knowledge. You gotta have the knowledge of how to do it. You know what I'm saying? If you work and you tell yourself, I'm not gonna enjoy no vices, no clubs, no partying, no drinking, no clothes, and you buy yourself 14 outfits, and you wear those same outfits for 2 to 3 years to 5 years, and the checks that you accumulate every 2 weeks, and you just saving it all and just handling your living quarters, you got the money to invest in whatever you want to invest in. You just got to understand that, and some people don't understand that. At the time when I denounced the street life, that's when I implemented that way of thinking. You see what I'm saying? Because I knew that if I can go shopping every day with this money from the street, now that I'm out of the street, you got to go shopping once every 2 to 3 months. You work this job, the first 2 months, you save that money. The third month, you take one of those checks and you buy you something. And then you just keep doing it like that. That way you feeding that lust of wanting or being used to getting things. Long as you able to feed that, you okay. Because that's, once you leave the street life, that's really the only thing you battle with, knowing that at any given moment you can just have access to thousands of dollars. But you can still have access to those thousands of dollars. You just got to work harder for it now with a 9-to-5 job.
Yeah.
So you can really live the same lifestyle without looking over your shoulder and all that, police wise, robbers. But even if you got a regular 9-to-5 job and you buy yourself nice things, you still got to look over your shoulder and worry about robbers or the police thinking that you're doing negative things to get your money when you're not. You just build up your credit. You got the newest year of a car. You done leased your jewelry. You leased your car, and you see what I'm saying? So you still can have what, and that's what I try to tell the people of today. You don't have to do negative things to live this type of lifestyle of glitz and glamour. You don't have to do nothing negative to do that. I haven't looked over my shoulder since a teenager. At any given time during that interview, it could have went down, you know, as you see in today's society with films and crimes caught on camera, because that's what would have happened. So once you gracefully bow out and remove yourself from that type of lifestyle, you know, and you going on to try to better yourself, not saying that past situations will forget about whatever legacy or whatever you left in that present time, so you never be naive to the fact, because that's usually when it happens to you. As soon as you think you changing your life, as soon as you think you're doing the right thing, your past come back to hunt you. So fortunately enough, that's not my case.